Gaza's civilian catastrophe and uncertain future have opened an increasingly public rift between President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In his most pointed criticism of the war yet, Biden warned that Israel is losing global support because of indiscriminate bombing. The president also referred to a private conversation in which Netanyahu pointed out to him, well, you carpet bombed Germany, you dropped the atom bomb, a lot of civilians died. To which Biden replied, yeah, that's why all these institutions were set up after World War II, to see to it it didn't happen again. Don't make the same mistakes we made after 9/11. Jonathan Lemire is Politico's White House bureau chief, host of MSNBC's Way Too Early, and MSNBC political analyst. John Spencer is chair of urban warfare studies at West Point's Modern War Institute. Good to have both of you here. Jonathan, these two leaders have had no shortage of disagreements over the past year. West Bank settlements, judicial overhaul, of course, the future of the Palestinian people. But since October 7th, Biden has thrown himself into Netanyahu's corner and defended Israel's campaign to destroy Hamas. What is the relationship like, though, right now, as you stand on the lawn of the White House?
Yeah, President Biden privately has never have felt all that warmly towards Benjamin Netanyahu, had real concerns about his plans to overhaul Israel's judiciary a year ago, called those plans undemocratic, but saw him as an ally with whom he had to work. And certainly after October 7th, he very quickly fully came to Israel's support. He traveled to Tel Aviv. He certainly rallied this administration to help supply Israel with weapons and money as it takes its fight to Hamas. But behind the scenes, there have been growing discontent in the administration as to how Israel was prosecuting this war. And now what we've seen is some of that has burst into the open, especially in recent days, where we had Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu flat out reject again a call for two-state solution. We also heard him differ with what the administration wants to see happen in Gaza after the war. Netanyahu is saying Israel needs to have a force there. There'll be an occupying presence there. Its military will, at the very least. And the Biden administration vehemently opposes to that. And now we have these comments from President Biden about the way Israel is launching its attacks in Gaza, where the civilian death toll, including children, is so terribly high. And just a few moments ago, in the building behind me, National Security Council spokesman John Kirby was pressed on the president's comments about the indiscriminate bombing. And Kirby would say, again, variations of the same thing, that we simply think the civilian death toll is too high, and we ask Israel to change tactics.
John, let's talk about a tactic that is in the news today, Israel's decision to flood Hamas tunnels. It is a major controversy, especially from the families of hostages who may still be underground. Biden says there is an assertion being made that where the seawater is being pumped, there are no hostages. He doesn't know that for sure, though. So my question to you is, can Israel be positive? And as an urban warfare expert, what does the flooding of tunnels accomplish for Israel that's so important that they're willing to risk that?
Sure. I mean, it's always risk. There is no way to be 100% sure, but you can be sure that Israel is doing everything it can before it does this tactic of flooding them with water. They're doing that to destroy, to meet that strategic objective of destroying Hamas's military capability. You can't leave these tunnels for anybody, even Hamas, to fall in under. And flooding them with water, actually, historically, in comparison to other ways that's been done, like filling them with tear gas and explosives or filling them with wet cement, is actually the fastest, most effective, and really the lowest collateral damage methodology to destroy a tunnel complex like this is the flooding. And that's why Egypt deployed it in 2000, really from 15 to 18, along the border with Gaza to destroy the smuggling tunnels. And it was very successful, actually.
Well, Jonathan, President Biden met with the families of American hostages still in Gaza earlier today, as I know you know. I want to play some of what we heard from them.
We felt that, and we felt before, and we were only reinforced in seeing and believing that we could have no better friend in Washington or in the White House than President Biden himself and his administration.
They are just not numbers, and they're just not faces. They are sons. They are sons. They are grandparents. They are mothers.
And she went on to say that Joe Biden gets that. So a lot of faith in the president, a lot of hope for their loved ones. How do you expect that influence to affect Joe Biden in dealing with Netanyahu? What's on the table is maybe the better question, beyond simply voicing his displeasure to force Israel to change course.
Well, certainly first, in a moment like this, President Biden has long shown real empathy to those who are suffering, drawing upon his own personal loss. It comes as no surprise that those families would find some comfort in their audience with him. But there are grave concerns about the fate of these American hostages. First of all, the U.S. does not have confirmation that they're all still alive. They believe there are 8 there still, but the numbers are fuzzy. Hamas has sort of suggested that they may not themselves have possession of all these American hostages. And of course, there's concern that what Israel is doing, whether it's flooding the tunnels or dropping bombs from the sky, could inadvertently kill some of those hostages. Now, we've heard the White House rule out the idea of putting conditions on aid to Israel, even though the president himself at one point mused that it could be possible. That's a card, though, they're not willing to play, at least not yet. But that is something that is possible for down the road, simply because the growing frustration here from the White House as to how Israel is conducting its war. There's no question it will continue to support Israel. It's the most important ally in the region. There's not going to be cutting ties with them. But there is grave concern with Netanyahu's leadership. There's a belief, as I've reported some weeks ago, belief in the building behind me that Netanyahu's time in power is limited. And would likely end at the end of this first phase of the war. But there's concerns as to what Netanyahu might do to extend his stay in power. So it is a tense relationship, Chris, and one that is only growing more strained by the day.
John, New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, just back from a trip to Arab states, offers this warning, and I'm going to quote him here. "I was left with a very strong impression here that the Saudis want the Americans to shut down the Gaza war as soon as possible because the death and destruction in Gaza is radicalizing their young population." The Qatari prime minister made a similar warning this weekend about the risk of radicalization. After all this death and destruction, is Israel potentially only building a more fearsome opponent, not eliminating Hamas?
In my opinion, no. I mean, really, the October 7th changed the world to include how you treat, basically terrorism. You can't give them sanctuary to build a military capability of that size. What Israel does the day after they destroy Hamas to remove this immediate threat to their survival will matter in that process, the battle of ideals, the battle of radicalization. But you can't have a military capability on your borders like this, and giving it sanctuary won't work either. So what they do the day after will matter.
John Spencer, Jonathan Lemire, good to have both of you on the program. Thank you. And